Hi, I'm Amy Porter, and this is my podcast. My mission in over 100 episodes is to show people how to empower themselves through music, business, and media. I try to see as clearly as possible how I can help. I showcase the music that I've played and the people I've met along the way. I'm a wife and a stepmom and a gamma. You might know me as a professor, performer, a producer, a publisher, a recording artist, and now an author. And I'm the founder of a couple of nonprofits. Welcome in to my Porter Flute Pod. Welcome to Porter Flute Pod. It's season 9, episode 5, and today we are setting the fundamentals for technique. I'm calling it being set for life. Put the fun back in fundamentals because they're going to come in handy when you are performing. The fundamentals help in your major pieces. It's not like you have to do them all fast and furious. That's no fun anymore. Sometimes there's no fun in that. So have that revelation that the fundamentals are there for you. Amanda Blaikie joins me in the podcast. She's representing The Method by Robert Langevin. I'm also joined by Angeleita Floyd. Her new edition of the Gaubert Legacy has just been released. I always love a good book. You buy music, go buy a book. Thanks for being in Porter Flute Pod. I'm so glad you're here. Angeleita Floyd, dynamic musician, highly respected conductor and educator, served as professor of flute at the University of Northern Iowa from 1986 to 2019. With her unique flair for insightful teaching and sensitive musical interpretation, Dr. Floyd mentored numerous prize-winning students on a regional and national level, preparing a new generation of collegiate professors and esteemed musicians. As a frequent guest artist, favorite events include master classes for Passion Flute, Foundations for Creative Performing, and directing flute festival orchestras throughout the U.S., including appearances at international flute festivals in Sweden, Ecuador, Brazil, and Costa Rica. Angeleita Floyd holds a Bachelor of Music degree from Stetson University, where she studied with eminent British flutist Geoffrey Gilbert, followed by graduate degrees from Florida State University with Charles Delaney. She is the author of the highly acclaimed flute method book, The Gaubert Legacy, Methods, Exercises, and Techniques for the Flutist, published by Windsor Press. And it's currently revised for a new 4th printing. We're going to feature it today. Floyd has traveled the world sharing Gilbert's transformational teaching and pedagogical methods. Founder of Windsor Press, she edited and published works by Trevor Y., Marcel Moïse, An Extraordinary Man, and Cheryl Cohen, Bel Canto Flute, the Rampal School. Since 2021, Dr. Floyd has focused on extensive research for a 4th printing of the Gaubert Legacy, Methods, Exercises, and Techniques for Flutist, an updated, revised, and expanded edition. Added to her distinguished career, Dr. Floyd's service to the National Flute Association includes President, Vice President, Program Chair, Board of Directors, Young Artist Competition and High School Soloist Coordinator, and current committee involvement. As a popular presenter and performer at the NFA conventions, she's given master classes, lectures, conducted the high school, collegiate, professional flute choirs, as well as the Flute Orchestra of the Americas. Under Dr. Floyd's direction, the University of Northern Iowa Flute Choir performed by invitation at the 45th NFA Convention in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Dr. Angeleita Floyd's honors include the NFA Distinguished Service Award in 2013, the University of Northern Iowa's James F. Lubker Faculty Research Award in 2013, the Iowa Board of Regents Award for Faculty Excellence in 2014-15, and the John L. Baker Faculty Development Award in 2017 for exemplifying the highest standards of professional, collegiate, teaching, and scholarly creative activity given by the faculty of the UNI School of Music. Dr. Floyd's dedication to education was recognized in 2021 with an Ovation Award by the Iowa Women's Foundation. Please welcome Angeleita Floyd. I want to thank you for sending me this treasure.
Thank you. I thought who better to be able to help share the Gilbert's legacy, and you're such a fabulous teacher and have so many wonderful students. So the backstory of this is that when I was at Florida State, I had studied with Geoffrey Gilbert for my undergraduate degree. He came to this country in 1969. I was very lucky because I'm from North Carolina. My teacher was Irene Maddox, and she said, there's a British flutist that's just come. And I had no idea who he was. I remember when my mother she drove the station wagon to Stetson to DeLand, and I auditioned for him, and I had no idea that he would change my life the way he did. In 1970, I went to Stetson to study with him. I was barely 17, and he was transformative. He really changed my life. 4 years with him, undergrad. Then I ended up at Florida State for grad school. I did my graduate work there, 2 masters and a doctorate, and then I needed a subject for my dissertation. So in the 80s, mid-80s, Gilbert had been doing a lot of master classes, and I just realized at some point that his teaching was way beyond anybody else's, and he made so much sense. And I think one of his true secrets was he was a very compassionate person. He had been through a major transition in his own playing, which made him feel a sense of compassion towards others that were trying to help improve their playing. This was maybe it was 82, 83. I went to see him and ask him if I could write my doctoral dissertation about his teaching and his method. And he kind of looked at me and said, "Angeleita, I don't know that I have a method." And I said, "Oh, but you do." And it's really wonderful, and we need to share that. So I started, it's one of those things where how do you write about somebody else's teaching? So I took copious notes and recorded his lessons and went down for a full year, went down every week for 3 or 4 days and took notes, transcribed all of these, and then sort of tried to make sense out of it, and wrote my dissertation about his teaching. And that I finished in 87, and in 1989 he died. It was very sudden. It was what was extremely memorable was that was the year that the National Flute Association did a cultural exchange delegation to the Soviet Union. That was 89, and I was there. I was on that exchange. Nancy Clue, there were a whole group of us, many of us, and he passed away. He died when we were actually in Moscow, if you can imagine. Yeah. And we were just devastated. But I came back, and everybody was like, "Oh my gosh, Gilbert's teaching. We need to have his teaching. What are we going to do?" And I kind of went, I have this 200-page dissertation that I wrote about his teaching. So it kind of made sense for me to do something with it. And I created my own publishing company. Windsor Press is me. And maybe purposely did it because I didn't want somebody to come in and edit what I had written. And one of the real important aspects of this book is that Gilbert's own words, I used so much of his own words that I had taken notes on, recorded, and those are all represented in teal. And so in the book, when you look at that, if it's in that color, teal, you know that those are Geoffrey's true words. And I didn't want somebody to come in and change it. So that's why I ended up creating Windsor Press. And Windsor is Geoffrey's middle name. Geoffrey Windsor Gilbert. So that's all. There you go. You've heard all the secrets right there. I'd sat in many lessons and took notes, and I promised all of these people. There's a whole list of them in the front of the book. I promised them I would give them a copy of my dissertation. And I did, and they were astounded with it. And so I thought, well, maybe this is something worth preserving and keeping. And so that sort of is how it all came about. That was printed in 1990. I had no idea what I was doing, but I did it anyway. And then we reprinted in 94 and reprinted again in 2004. And come to 2022, we had no more copies left. And what was I going to do about that? And think about from 1990 to now, this day and age, the difference I wrote my dissertation on a Tandy 1000. Do you even know what that is? It was a Radio Shack computer. And no disk, and, floppy disk to soft disk to hard drives. So basically, Tara Mead is my literally right-hand person, assistant that I couldn't do without, that she and I recreated the disc. Basically, we just had to redo the whole thing because there was no discs that worked. So we just, it desperately needed to be revised. We had never done a revision of it, just that even the terms and clarity and all of that. So how do you start doing something like that? I felt like I had little bits of inspiration, probably from Gilbert, that made me realize, okay, I need to show this and let somebody experience it that doesn't know Gilbert, that didn't study with me, that didn't have a William Bennett as a teacher or something like that. And I shopped it out to several different people that read it, and they would say, well, I don't quite understand this. And so it really, made me look at it and think about, okay, it needs clarification. So that was a great deal of what I did, what happened in this second edition, and added a lot of material to it, some material in the front that's really lovely about his compassionate teaching from the words of William Bennett and Susan Milan and Trevor Y. and teachers, his students, that said this was really, what I learned from him was more than just about playing the flute. It was how to be a teacher. It was how to have compassion and support for your students. So that was part of what I ended up making, my career teaching, was to pass all of this along.
Now I see someone in here, but it's not you.
Well, you know who it is? It's Grace Petrie.
I loved Grace. Oh my gosh. Grace Petrie helped me start the Atlanta Flute Club back in the day. This is a young Grace Petrie.
That is young Grace Petrie.
Oh, how beautiful. Yeah. What's one exercise that you personally love, you like to return, or is there one that you take to a student? Like, what's your first go-to?
I think Gilbert was very, actually quite organized in his thinking about having a daily practice routine. And there's a whole section in the book that covers in detail what you would do, and starting with tone studies. And it was a matter of trying, finding the harmonic in the sound and the smoothness and the color and those kinds of things. And he said, the first day it might take you an hour to find the sound you want, but then the next day it might be 50 minutes. And you get to the point where you have a sense of what that, by repetition, warming up, finding the right quality of air and sound and lips and all of that, then you're ready to do your technique. And for him, that was scales, arpeggios, the whole gamut. And he would have us do, all the major, minor, harmonic, everything, melodics, arpeggios, whole tones, diminished sevenths, all of that. And with just out stopping. That was it. He could get it down to 19 minutes. And it was up to B, and then extended up to D. And it was, that was your foundation. You did that every day. That was what you did. what he realized at some point was that people were, or students were, learning to play the flute by playing pieces. And you don't build a technique by playing pieces. You build your technique by learning the language, learning the vocabulary of music. And that was scales and arpeggios. And then you can add lots of different things to that. Little tone studies. The Moist 24 was a favorite book of his. He had, you'll see in that particular section, really detailed information about what books he used and suggested, and what that daily practice routine was. Paula Elliott was very helpful in helping to organize his routine during that time in the 80s. So I gave her credit for that as well, to help in doing that. But yeah, there's so many great, one little exercise, but how you go about it can really change things.
These scales are not just for your warm-ups. They are a language. What a beautiful way to put that.
It's your vocabulary. It gives you a way to express yourself. So when you have comfort with it, so you're allowed to become yourself. He was always trying to open up our musicality, give us the tools to then express what we felt about music and in our hearts and those kinds of things. And if you don't have the skill, how do you possibly do it if you don't have that vocabulary?
Exactly.
I'll tell you a little bit about why it took so long. I said 2022 is when we realized that there were no more books, right? And it took quite some time to really get this edition put together. What made me really look at the book and think, oh, I've got to start revising, is that I realized there were things in his little biography that I got from him that really weren't right, weren't correct, were not accurate. And I, in the 80s, where did you get your information? We didn't have a Google, and we didn't have encyclopedias with Geoffrey Gilbert. Yeah. So I got this information from Geoffrey, and I honestly think he didn't remember. He was 12 years old when he was like playing in bands, and 14 has his own silent cinema job. Can you imagine? And 16 he's in the Halle Orchestra, and 19 he's playing in Beecham's London Philharmonic. Age 21 he is principal of the London Philharmonic, and this is the pre-war years, which are fabulous. Well, I started doing more research about his life. The family, Manya Gilbert is still living. The son has passed. She's the daughter. It's not given to me. I am the keeper of what I call the Gilbert Family Archives, and it is cablegrams from Beecham and letters from Hamilton Hardy and every BBC transparency that he ever played and all of his programs. And so I started working at the same time that we were doing the revision of the Gilbert Legacy, started working on a biography of his life, a real detailed biography. And we're up to 10 chapters of that, and realized that putting together these two books was going to be 400 pages, Amy. So we stopped and decided we just needed to get the Gilbert Legacy out. How are we going to call that? What is it going to be? That's book 1, Methods, Exercises, and Techniques. And we have book 2, The Life of a Visionary. The Gilbert Legacy book 2 will be The Life of a Visionary Flutist. And that we're working on now, and are trying to get the difference in a whole year of doing this other edition and printing. We're going back through and revising even what we've written, these 10 chapters, because it just gets tighter and tighter. Yeah. But I want people to realize he was a well-respected and prominent musician that ended up in his 50s coming to the United States, conducting. He became he was a conductor at Stetson and taught flute. And his real gift was when he started doing master classes, and he refused for many years. For 10 years, Trevor tried to get him to do master classes, and Geoffrey refused to do it. He said, it's not how the British do, they won't they won't like that. They don't want to air their dirty linen and their dirty, their dirty laundry and public,
I
you know.
see.
And so finally, Trevor sort of worked it out. So Jeffrey realized that he was so articulate and so perceptive that he knew just what to say to lead people. And I love this. This is in the book. He said that at one point, Lady Beecham was talking to Beecham, Sir Thomas Beecham, and said, "What do you think Jeffrey's true? Will he be remembered?" And Beecham said, as an influencer, as a teacher, he will be remembered as a teacher because so much of his playing doesn't exist anymore.
Exactly. No, no.
Not in that period. It was World War II and later, and yeah. So
I enjoy the section of quotes from different students.
yes, those were from the master classes, and we did. We came back and did a couple of those. Hats off to our teachers, the Ruby anniversary, those kinds of things. And it was that was a group of us that were devoted followers of his in that time, in those summers, 84, 85, 86.
Incredible. What would you say about taking auditions and your career as a flutist?
I think he would say you need to be prepared. And how do you prepare for something like that? You have scores. Of course, technically you have to be at the height of your technique. And then you need to know the scores. You need to know the parts. You need to know who you're playing with so you can, so it all fits together. It was really, he had scores. I have all of these things in my home in Iowa, the library, all of his scores, music and books. I used to have there, and it's now at the Guildhall in the Gilbert. There's a Gilbert room in the Guildhall.
What year did he come over to America to teach?
Came in 69 to teach at Stetson. It's a funny story in a way. 1966, Daytona Beach, the Volusia County Arts Festival wanted to do something to change the motto for Daytona Beach was sex, sand, and suds. And they wanted to do something to show that there were a group of people there that were very culturally oriented and wanted to do that. So they decided to have an orchestral festival. And what's funny is that they asked all of the orchestras, or prominent orchestras in the United States, and they all went, Daytona Beach in July? Are you out of your mind? Right. But they asked the London Symphony, and they all went, absolutely. So 1966, the London Symphony came and did a 3 or 4 week, a month long festival in Daytona Beach. And Jeffrey he never played in the London Symphony in England, but he was always one of the players that they would take as an extra when they went on tour. So he came, and I think that year was with Peter Lloyd, or Alex Murray had been principal, but then he went to Interlochen instead. So Jeffrey came, and he brought his wife, and they went, oh, this is lovely. Why not? And Stetson asked him for many years, 60s, 67, 68, every year invited him to come and teach at Stetson, to conduct the orchestra and the flute studio. And he just said, no, not ready yet. And then by 69, they said, okay, we'll give it a year. We'll see. Because they invited his wife to teach speech and drama. She was a great actress, and so she taught at Stetson as well. So they really both had a position there, and it was good. It was a great time for them. And then they ended up staying. He taught at Stetson for 10 years, then retired 65, and lived another 10 years and did the master classes.
He was very lucky to have you as his student.
Oh, that's so kind of you to say. Thank you for saying that. But I feel like this is something that I can give because the family has allowed me to really help pass on. And then this biography of his life, I hope I'll finish that in the next year. But it's
Yes.
it's so fascinating, Amy, the stories. It really, he went 19, I have to think about the years, 1936. Beecham took the London Philharmonic to Germany on tour, and Geoffrey was introduced to Hitler. I have all these stories from that tour. It's all been written about in these other books. It's so fun putting all the pieces together.
Absolutely. What a relationship you had with him. I love that he wrote to you as well. He wrote you a letter. Yeah. And of course, it's, before this whole thing happened, it was kind of in the infancy that he wrote that letter.
Absolutely. I think he was, I have to say he was probably shocked that I did what I did. Yeah, it's just one of those things. So, because I will say I wasn't, again, the best student he ever had, but I was growing up. I actually started college when I was 17, and I just needed to mature. And then by the end of my time there, I remember that he was really impressed with what I could actually do. And the fact that we stayed in touch, and I loved his classes. They were so important to so many people at that time. And that's very kind of you to say those things. So correct. I'll do a book signing at NFA. Carolyn Nussbaum has reached out about that, which is wonderful. And I really appreciate you having me on your podcast. This is really so lovely of you. And thank you.
Thanks for being a Porter Flute Pod. Today we're talking about the new book, The Langevin Method, Developing Musical Artistry Through Efficient Practice, compiled and edited by Amanda Blaikie, published by Theodore Presser. Robert Langevin's indispensable scale patterns and exercises are now available to all flutists for the first time. These studies in tone, technique, and artistry have previously been known mostly to his students through his concise sketches. Langevin's iconic 15 extended scale patterns and the 6 chapters leading to it customize exercises to work on several skills simultaneously, making practice sessions most efficient. Amanda Blaikie of the Detroit Symphony Orchestra, a former student of Langevin, has collated and written out the complete exercises and contributed to the commentary. This annotated collection was prepared alongside Langevin, who also contributed advice on practicing, artistry, and auditioning. Please welcome Amanda Blaikie to the podcast.
Thank you, Amy. Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to talk about this book that you mentioned on the last time you were here talking about your 5 daily exercises. So Let's just get right into it. Let's introduce the newest publication, The Langevin Method. So what inspired, there it is, what inspired the project?
All of Robert's students know his infamous scale patterns. There are 2 pages of his handwriting, extended scales, start it this way, ... turn around on the highest possible note, ... turn around on the lowest possible note, etc. 15 different patterns. There are high register extreme patterns, pinky exercises, tone exercises, articulation exercises, none of which have truly been written out completely, let alone in a full book. So back in the pandemic, 2021, I said, okay, this was something I had thought about for many years. It just kept coming to me over and over again. I had thought if I had ever done a DMA with him, I would have done this. And here we were in COVID lockdown, and I thought this is perfect. So what better thing to do than, after having just had a baby, do a full-on project? So I approached him. I said, can I do this with you? Can I do all the work for you? You tell me what you want to change, and I'll work with the publishers, and you can be as involved or as little involved as you want, but I will basically do all the work, because otherwise I just knew it wouldn't either happen or someone else would do it. So I was happy to do basically all the legwork for the project.
That's very generous of you. With the time, the family, and the job.
Yeah. It took 5 years. So here we are, finally.
There it is. There's the answer. If you have the time, you have the dedication, it just comes out. So is that a milestone to you personally to have this done?
Yeah, I would say so. And it was very important for me to help him because I think he deserves it for his legacy. You know, every student of his has always said, I wish these were printed, fully. I wish it was something I could read and not just do in my head. While that's great and all, it can take forever. And when you're trying to get through that many scale patterns, not necessarily in a day, it's nice to have it written out. So yes, I'm very excited that it was done. I feel honored to be part of it, but truly I feel like he deserves this also, as does the flute community. The flute community deserves to have this amazing book of exercises in every realm of his teaching.
What was the impact he had on you as a mentor?
Well, I first started studying with him up at Orford after my freshman year, and I went there 9 summers, and I had to keep going back because once I heard him, I said, okay, I need to hear you as often as possible because I want to, hear that sound. And to me, at that point, it was the closest I had heard to my own conception of flute playing. And so I would say he helped me continue to develop that sound concept. And I would say especially tone colors. He's well known for doing tone color exercises, being able to do edgy, but also round, the beautiful French round tone colors, let alone all of his Juilliard and Manhattan School of Music students know his famous scale patterns. And for sure, once I started doing them and I applied to study with him at MSM for the orchestral performance degree, we had to prepare those for the audition. And so I worked very hard on those scale patterns as well as the other repertoire. But he really transformed really my entire playing. He just brought the level of my playing up between his tone and technique exercises. I can't thank him enough for that.
That's the process of the transformation of years of teaching material into a published book, because you have organizing the material, you have collaborating with Robert and the calendar that is his teaching calendar, and then writing your own commentary. Can you talk about how that process happened?
Yeah, sure. So we would have phone calls at length here and there to discuss what we wanted to include. I basically would literally screenshot snippets of each scale and then write the introductions. And then I would work with the publishers directly. He was more involved towards the end, but really it was mostly me working with him and then me working with the publishers. And they asked me to basically format the whole thing in one very long Word document. Thankfully, in the end, they did all of the actual notation, but there was still quite a bit of what exercises do we want to add? Is this something we can add because of copyright? There's some copyright hangups that took a while. That was one of the biggest snags, actually, time-wise. And then, I would write an introduction, run it through Daniel Dorff, run it through him, make sure it was, something he approved of, all the things. So all of the text I worked very hard on, but also wanted to make sure it really represented what he wanted to say in each case.
Copywriting, a very big snag when you're publishing.
Yes.
Yeah. How do you copyright a scale? You're not copywriting
or
scale.
Long tones. Yeah. In fact, we did have to go around some of the moyis, having the long tones in there, despite them being written out differently. We had to work through some copyright issues there. So,
Amanda, it's a half step.
I know. I know. You wouldn't think that long tones were copyrighted, but
okay, hang on. That's copywriting a half step exercise?
I believe so. It's been a year or so since we went through that snag, maybe more, a year and a half. But I know that if Presser felt like it was important to work it through with them and them to get a small cut of the book, then it is what it is. So
the drama of the half step.
The drama. I know, the drama of the half step. Truly, who knew that long tones were so,
Yeah.
Nonetheless, we adjusted them, visually based on Robert's approach.
How?
But we basically have it so that you're slurring in twice. You can do forte without vibrato, back into the same 2 half steps with vibrato, and then back again pianissimo without vibrato and then with vibrato. And then there are 3 different versions, where you can move the dynamics around. to work on every possible concept, attack, release, vibrato, tone color, dynamic, So there are 3 versions of the long tones variations, A, B, and C.
Wow, that's the get around.
Yes.
Amazing. What was it like to write the commentary?
It was really fun because having studied with him for so many years, I felt like I really knew his language and what he would want to say. And watching him teach master classes at Orford for 3 weeks for 9 summers, you get to know someone's style, pretty well. So it worked out well. And, we made a few adjustments. There were times when he would use a French word that sometimes was confusing. So we would adjust little things here or there, or vice versa, trying to keep it more, true to what he would say. But yeah, it was really fun. And honestly, he, for the most part, it was right on par. It was very easy to work through the text together. I just kind of would write something out, try to describe the exercise, what you're supposed to do, and then just run it by him, make sure it made sense for him and he liked it, and he would okay it or whatnot. And at one point I had to go to FedEx, print out all 80 something pages and mail it to him for him to go through and actually write out little things he wanted at that point. That was when we were getting closer to the end, maybe the last 2 years closer to the end, but still at that point everything was notated at least, and he could make adjustments and then mailed it back to me.
Wow, incredible. Yeah. Highlight some of your favorite exercises for the students who will benefit from this book.
I love the tone color exercises, and there are a few that we added that weren't necessarily things he had taught, because he was very much and is very much a proponent of Trevor Y Volume 1. So there's some of the Ravel. There's also more of the Ravel introduction and Allegro in the high register, and that one I just love for high register, just dynamics and tone colors. I would say I love the pinky exercise. I love a good pinky exercise. It's different than the ones in my book. And then, of course, his scale patterns, even just starting out with the first 4, that's whenever you studied with him, he would say, okay, you're going to do extended scales, inverted arpeggios, broken arpeggios, and scales and thirds. And that's the first chunk of the assignment. And then you work on that till you get that basically fast enough. And then you start adding patterns one at a time. But those are probably what I would say are the go-tos. Some of the tone exercises, and then for sure the first 4 of the scale patterns are a good place to start. Chapter 1 is pretty much all tone. Chapter 2 is more tone colors. And then we've got articulation in chapters 3, tongued intervals, 4 register. Chapter 4 is low register articulation. Chapter 5 is the low register pinky. Then in chapter 6, we have some of these extremes, like very tricky, very high register extremes. And there's a chart in there because there's a way in which you can do each letter a bit like Moïse. Do letter A of this, do letter A of that, and do letter A of that. Otherwise, you're going to really hurt those chops. It'd be too much. And then chapter 7, that would be all of the 15 official scale patterns. Chapter 8 is basically commentary on artistry, taking auditions, technique and sound, and, basically advice and other methods that he teaches from, that he recommends. So it's a full comprehensive book of everything he teaches. It's like having a lesson with him in a book, which is really exciting. We did include basic long tones, so even a beginner could start with this book. I think it would be a bit of a reach in some of the technical stuff, but for sure intermediate flutists who want to get better, and then I would say advanced and professionals. Professionals like myself, like this is the kind of thing I'm going to use to keep in shape, stay in shape, work out different patterns that might appear in repertoire, all the things. So it's truly helpful, really.
Okay, let's say we take some time off and we come back. First thing to go for me, articulation.
Same. Yes. All of the articulation.
So can he help us there?
Oh my God, yeah, chapter 4. Chapter 4, is it? Yes. This is a lovely low register articulation exercise. He wrote this out. This was a new one for the book, but it's based on a Moïse one, and 9 different ways to... You probably have seen the exercise that he teaches from. Yeah.
remind me. It's ha ha, disconnected, connected. Then you do tutu. Then you can do cuckoo. Then you can do tuku. Correct. Then you can do kudu backwards. And then you could do what else?
Dugu, you did, and then gudugu, so backwards triple, and then regular triple, and you can even do displaced triple. Actually, the very first way is to do it entirely slurred, and that's what he says. If you do it entirely slurred, that's sort of your foundation for sound.
That sounds horrible. I know, I sound horrible. Everybody, listen. If I'm going ho 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 ho, I sound awful.
No, you don't. No,
I do, and I always tell people, you're going to sound really bad because your sound goes everywhere.
Yeah, it's hard, and he will say, and we put it in the commentary here.
You're going to sound crappy. No.
might basically, if you start losing the core of the sound and the focus, go back to number one and start all slurred, and then you can add little bits again. But yeah, it's hard. It's definitely a hard exercise. And actually, he and I didn't do this, but I did letter it myself, so you can even do 4 measures a day.
Okay.
And you're doing it 9 times. I mean, you're doing 4 measures 9 times, so you're doing it. It's a bit more efficient for those of us that have other things to practice, but that way you're getting to all of the articulations every day.
There are no words. I mean, there kind of are. Okay, so I'm thankful right now that I did go to Juilliard in the 80s.
You didn't have to do this.
Well, when the New York Philharmonic comes to Michigan, and Robert stands in my school, I can't speak half the time. I'm just in awe of everything he says. And sometimes it goes against what I do. So I shoot my hand up and I say, Robert, could you clarify that for me? Because I want to teach it right.
Yeah.
Articulations in Petrushka, for instance, anything I can ask him when he comes here. So I just am so thankful that you're translating this incredible flute pedagogue for us. All right. So let's talk about beyond technical development. What do you hope readers gain from the book? Because, we don't want to get young flutists injured. And they quite frankly, Amanda, sometimes I call this wallpaper, because if you hold it up far away, all those scales just look wallpaper-ish.
Yeah, it does.
And it really is not attractive to me. Yeah. So what do you hope young readers gain from the book, and what can we say to them that won't scare them?
I think it's about pacing yourself with this one. Maybe choose some tone, choose some articulation, choose some technical. You don't really need to go, unless you're really concentrating in the summer period on technique specifically, perhaps maybe an hour a day, but hour and a half a day is plenty. But I'm not doing all 15 of these every day. I'll pick 2 or 3 and do some other things. The main thing is I'm trying to hit tone, I'm trying to hit articulation, and I love a good chromatic, and I love some other scales. Extended scales are one of my go-tos every day. There's the rapid scales in here. I love those for speed. And then you can do some fun intervals, whether it's 4ths or 6ths, but I think the main thing is starting out small and then add gradually, because that's the way he teaches as well. That's why we did suggest in that one chapter, chapter 6, following the letters. Otherwise, it'd be way too much to do.
Are there tempo suggestions?
There are not, but I think what's important is that whatever tempo you start at, it's clean, and you're gradually working your way up. For sure, I know that Robert himself is, usually hovering between the 130s to 150s when he's doing these, depending on the scale pattern. But when you're learning it, sometimes you have to start off at 70s, 80s, just to get it clean and solid and not build in tension. So I think it's more important to just play well. What we did put in the book was suggesting a lot of them start slurred, and then as you feel proficient in the pattern itself, then adding articulations. Mm-hmm. But sometimes it's helpful to just make sure the fingers are clean, as you know.
Yes. Okay, our producer, Alan J. Thomas, said he has 3 rapid-fire questions for you. The first one is, one exercise every flutist should practice daily.
I would say the extended scales, especially if you're an advanced student. It goes up to D and C sharp, but I know you go up to E.
Yes, I do.
That's amazing, too.
Because I couldn't.
Love that, yeah. Why not? I have to rewrite the book again. Amy Porter version.
You know me, I love a challenge. I even switched flute at age 50 just to learn everything all over again.
Why not? But I do love that Ravel introduction allegro. There's the high register solo. And because we've divided it into low, middle, and high register tone studies, that's probably one of my favorites, at least for high register.
I know for me, not having been his student, my favorite practice tip from Robert is the ha-ha exercise to begin your articulation. What's your favorite Langevin tip?
I'm going to say the extreme, this chapter 6 extreme, because I feel like probably what helped my technique the most, especially with classical symphony. And, there's a period in time where you either need to work more on your tone or more on your technique. And for me, it was working, really bolstering the technique. So any and all of his technical exercises were helpful. But these extreme ones that lay mostly in the high register were truly life-changing. So that chapter, I would say.
I like knowing that the extremes are written in a book, because generally it takes our teacher to just tug on us and say, you can make that register change easily. I have difficulty with octaves. When I was younger, I wasn't tripping over much, except octaves were really, really a problem. And I don't think I had an octave exercise at that point. Except just octaves. What's your favorite place to tell everyone where to get this book?
Well, I would say you can get it directly from Presser on their website. There's also the only place you can get the digital version for, Fourscore or other music reading apps is Presser.com. So they have a tab where you do, spiral bound or digital e-reader. So that's the place to get it, especially digitally, but all of the flute shops all over have it. So whether you're in Michigan or New York or wherever, they also have a warehouse in Germany, which one reason we went with Presser was their distribution. So Presser has a warehouse in Germany, so this is literally all over the world now.
I appreciate the spiral bound because it can fit on the music stand, and more students than not are using the iPad. Tell us where we can find you at the convention. Will you be there?
I wish I was going to be there. I was hoping that maybe last year we were actually hoping to get the book out for the convention. And then this year I had a conflict. So next year I will be at the convention though. But in the meantime, I'm in Michigan. So if anyone wants to come find me there, or Robert's in New York. And while he's a bit, on the quieter side and not necessarily a social media person, obviously he's thrilled that the book is finally out.
Good. And you can call him up for a lesson, can't you? You can email him and have a lesson.
Yeah. I mean, I want to go and get my book signed. I'm like, Robert, I need to come see you so I can get my book signed by you.
You do. Well, this has been so delightful to talk about the new book. Congratulations, because I know we touched on it when your 5 exercises came out, the first edition, and now you have the second edition that kind of follows alongside the book, right?
Yeah, and I added new exercises to that. The layout and format of my second edition's different. We've added the tuning charts for the drone exercises, added the Francis Blaisdell pinky exercise. But most importantly, it's a great addition to Robert's book because nothing crosses over. But these were little extra things that I felt really enhanced my playing. When I started in the DSO, I felt like I had to have a little bit of all sorts of things daily in my playing. And besides scales and long tones, some of that work in my second edition 5 daily exercises was sort of what I need to touch on a regular basis.
Fantastic. Thank you for giving us structure to technique practice.
Oh, welcome. Well, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for being in Porter Flute Pod.
Thanks, Amy. Appreciate it.
I'd like to thank my guests for being here and representing such great books to bring along with us whenever we need to bring back our fundamentals. It doesn't matter if you're an intermediate or advanced or a beginner, these books will help you greatly. Make sure you're recording yourself. Make sure you're listening to yourself. And above all, have fun. Find these books at the National Flute Association Convention in Portland, Oregon, and also make sure you buy them at your favorite flute store. Thanks for being in Porter Flute Pod. I'm so grateful for you.